Settle into the sleepy mind channel. Today we will explore Grand Teton National Park, a place where mountains rise almost directly from a wide open valley, where glaciers shaped granite peaks and clear alpine lakes, and where moose, elk, and bears live within a great wild landscape of North America. The land was formed by rising faults, moving ice, flowing water, and immense stretches of time, creating one of the most remarkable mountain landscapes on Earth. If you like videos like these, feel free to like and subscribe. More videos are posted weekly. Grand Teton National Park holds a skyline so striking it can feel unreal when first seen. In many mountain regions, the land rises in stages through lower ridges and wooded foothills before reaching the high country. Here the mountains lift suddenly. The valley floor stretches broad and open, and from that open plain, the Teton Range rises sharply toward the sky. That direct rise gives the range its presence and has made it one of the most recognizable landscapes in North America. At the heart of the range stands Grand Teton, rising 13,775 feet above sea level. Yet the mountain often appears even taller because Jackson Hole below rests thousands of feet lower. The difference between valley and summit creates a great vertical landscape in the American West. Morning light moves across the peaks, while long shadows linger over sagebrush flats, and the mountains seem almost to shift in mood as light changes across stone. These mountains were shaped in an unusual way. Rather than forming through volcanic fire, the Tetons rose through fault block uplift. Along the Teton Fault, movements in the earth slowly lifted the mountains while the valley floor settled downward. Those changes happened over long spans of time, yet their results stand clear in the bold profile of the range. Few mountain systems reveal their origins so visibly. The rocks themselves hold stories far older than the mountain's youthful appearance suggests. Ancient stone forms the core of the range, some of it among the oldest rock in North America. Yet the shape of the Tetons, their sharpness and steep granite walls, is much younger. Ancient material and youthful form exist together, giving the range a character unlike softer and older worn-down mountains. Then came ice, a great sculptor of this landscape. During repeated glacial ages, rivers of ice moved through these mountains, cutting deep valleys, sharpening ridges, and carving basins that later filled with water. Much of the grandeur visible today comes from those glaciers. Their movement sharpened peaks into pointed forms and widened valleys into broad troughs through which rivers now move. Signs of that icy past remain everywhere. Glacial moraines rise along valley edges. Scratches left by moving ice can still be found in exposed rock. High in the range, glaciers remain, including Teton Glacier, continuing in slow motion the shaping of stone. Even in silence, these mountains carry the memory of movement. Some of the park's most beautiful waters were born from that same glacial work. Jenny Lake rests in a basin carved by ice, its clear waters reflecting forest and mountain in stillness. On calm mornings, the peaks may appear doubled upon the surface. Jackson Lake stretches farther north, broad and cold beneath the range, holding the grandeur of high-elevation water. Flowing through this landscape is the Snake River, winding through sage flats, cottonwoods, wetlands, and broad open valleys. In places it bends in sweeping curves, slowing into reflective reaches where mountains and sky gather on the water. Along its course, the river nourishes a rich web of life, linking mountain snow to valley meadow. Grand Teton National Park forms part of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, a large, intact, temperate ecosystem. That means this landscape is not isolated scenery. It is part of a living system where migrations continue, predators still move across large territories, and ecological relationships persist in ways rare in much of the modern world. Across willow flats, moose browse in the shallows, elk move seasonally through valleys and forests, bison graze open meadows, pronghorn cross sage country with speed. In remote forests, bears wander through berry patches and high country slopes. These animals are not separate from the landscape. They belong to the same long unfolding story written into mountain, river, and plain. At lower elevations, sagebrush and grasslands stretch across the valley floor. Forests rise into bands of pine and fir. In summer, alpine meadows brighten with wildflowers during a brief season of abundance. Higher still lies alpine tundra, where wind and cold shape a quieter world of hardy plants, pikas among broken rock, and marmots calling from sun-warmed slopes. Weather moves quickly in the Tetons. A clear morning can become cloud-wrapped by afternoon. Summer storms may gather over the peaks quickly. Thunder rolls through the range while light shifts across ridges and cliffs. Even calm days carry movement, in drifting clouds, changing wind, or water running cold from snowfields. Winter transforms the park into another world. Deep snow settles across meadows and forests. Rivers steam in bitter air. Mountain ridges hold corniced snow and blue shadow. Silence deepens. Tracks written across fresh snow become signs of unseen life moving through the cold. The Tetons reveal geology with unusual clarity. Ancient seabeds are recorded in lifted rock layers. Marine fossils have been found high in mountains now swept by alpine wind. Valley floors were shaped by glacial outwash. Moraines trace ancient margins of ice. The land seems to display the processes that made it. The range stretches roughly 40 miles from north to south. Within that span lie high summits, hidden lakes, hanging valleys, rocky cirques, quiet forests, and broad river flats. Places like the Cathedral Group rise in dramatic clusters of stone. Mount Owen stands near Grand Teton in stern company. Every ridge seems to lead to another basin, another lake, another unfolding view. Light gives the mountains endless variation. At sunrise, granite may glow warm gold. At evening, the peaks cast long shadows across Jackson Hole, while the highest summits hold the final light. In autumn, aspens turn gold through the valley. In spring, rivers swell with snowmelt. Each season reshapes the same land in a different mood. Night brings another dimension. Far from city glow, dark skies spread over the range with clarity. Stars gather in immense fields above the black outline of the mountains. The same fault-lifted peaks and glacial-carved valleys rest beneath a turning sky that has watched these mountains through ages. Perhaps what makes Grand Teton so compelling is the balance it holds. There is power in the abrupt rise of stone, yet calm in reflective lakes. There is severity in winter and softness in summer meadows. Rivers move while mountains stand. Ice once carved the land, and water still refines it. Everything feels both ancient and alive. Beyond the great skyline itself, the story of Grand Teton National Park deepens in the quieter details of how mountains continue to change. It can be easy to think of mountains as fixed and permanent, but the Tetons reveal something different. Even now, the land is not still. The Teton Fault, which helped lift this range, remains part of an active geological system. Though movement happens on timescales beyond ordinary human notice, the landscape is still being shaped. The mountains rise, weather works against them, rivers carry away fragments of stone, and the long conversation between uplift and erosion continues. That sense of living geology gives the range unusual presence. The Tetons are often described as fault block mountains, a classic example studied for the way great sections of the Earth's crust shifted and created the dramatic relief visible today. The steep eastern face of the range and the broad valley of Jackson Hole are expressions of those forces. One rose, one settled. Together, they created a landscape unlike most mountain regions, where foothills often soften the transition between valley and summit. Here there is almost no such softness. The mountains appear to rise directly from the plain. Jackson Hole itself is an essential part of the story. Though the peaks draw the eye, the valley below gives them scale. Without that wide open floor, the mountains would not feel so immense. The valley stretches broad beneath the range, shaped by glacial deposits, river sediments, wetlands, and ancient outwash plains. Sagebrush moves in the wind across open flats where wildlife travels through seasons, much as it has for centuries. Signal Mountain rises from this valley as a vantage point where the relationship between mountain and basin becomes easier to understand. From above, the Snake River can be seen winding through the landscape in silver curves. Forests, meadows, lakes, and distant summits appear connected as parts of a single whole. The view reveals not separate scenic features, but one integrated living system. Water shapes much of that system. The Snake River moves through riparian corridors rich in life. Cottonwoods grow along its banks. Wetlands spread where water lingers. Beaver activity helps shape ponds and marshes that support birds, amphibians, and smaller forms of life, often overlooked beside the grandeur of the peaks. Yet these quieter places are vital to the health of the landscape. Along these waters, trumpeter swans move with remarkable calm. Bald eagles may perch near shorelines or circle above the river. Native cutthroat trout move through cold waters, fed by snowmelt. Fly fishers have long been drawn here by those rivers, though even without fishing, the waters themselves seem central to the character of the park. They bring motion through the stillness. The park contains more than 100 alpine and backcountry lakes, many tucked into basins beneath steep walls of stone. Some are reached only by long trails climbing through forest and meadow. Others, like Taggart Lake, offer accessible glimpses into the glacial world. There the trail passes through woodland before opening to water ringed by mountain views, a scene that holds the essence of the Tetons in miniature. Above those trails, climbers have long been drawn toward the high summits. Grand Teton has inspired mountaineers for generations. The first recorded ascent in the year 1898 marked one chapter in a continuing human fascination with these peaks. Yet even for those who never climb high stone walls, the mountains carry the quiet drama of possibility. Storms remind visitors that these peaks remain powerful places. Summer afternoons often bring rapidly building clouds. Lightning can become a serious danger, especially in exposed high terrain. That quick shift from calm to storm is part of mountain reality. The same atmosphere that brings clear mornings can gather thunder over ridgelines within hours. At higher elevations, alpine tundra begins where forests give way to open rock and hardy low plants. Conditions there can be severe. Growing seasons are brief. Winds can be relentless. Yet life persists in subtle ways. Pikas gather food among stones. Marmots whistle from sun-warmed ledges. Tiny alpine flowers bloom close to the ground where warmth lingers. These upper elevations also hold fragile whitebark pine forests, whose seeds support wildlife, including grizzly bears. Those trees face threats from disease and climate pressures, a reminder that even seemingly timeless landscapes carry vulnerabilities. Preservation here is not simply about scenery, it is about maintaining living relationships. Wildlife moves through this terrain according to old patterns. Elk migrations link mountains, valleys, and surrounding refuges. The nearby National Elk Refuge forms part of that broader story. Pronghorn undertake one of the longest land migrations in North America. Bison, once nearly lost from much of the region, remain part of these open landscapes because conservation efforts held. Predators too shape the ecosystem. Wolves restored in nearby Yellowstone helped renew ecological relationships across the region. Grizzly bears and black bears move through connected habitats in search of seasonal foods. Their presence speaks to the ecological integrity of a place large enough to sustain such animals. The human story here reaches back beyond national park boundaries. Indigenous presence in this region extends more than 10,000 years. Peoples including the Shoshone knew these valleys and mountains long before explorers or homesteaders arrived. Their relationship with the land formed part of a far older history than park maps often suggest. Later came trappers, surveyors, climbers, settlers, and eventually conservationists. The name Teton is often linked to French trappers who gave names to features in this rugged country. In time, the beauty of the range inspired efforts to preserve it. The park was established in the year 1929 and later expanded through the addition of lands in Jackson Hole. John D. Rockefeller Jr. played a major role in protecting much of that landscape from development, shaping the park known today. Historic places remain within the valley, including Mormon Row, where weathered homestead barns stand before the mountains. The famous barns have become among the most photographed structures in America, yet beyond photography, they suggest another layer of human life shaped by this valley. Oxbow Bend offers another iconic place, especially at sunrise when calm water may hold reflections of Mount Moran and surrounding forests. Yet what draws people there is often not merely the view, but the stillness. The river slows, birds move in marsh grasses, light gathers gradually. It feels less like spectacle and more like quiet revelation. Season after season transforms the same places. Spring brings snowmelt and rushing rivers. Summer opens wildflower meadows. Autumn turns aspens gold and brings the sound of elk during the rut. Winter returns deep snow and long blue shadows. The park is never one thing. It changes constantly. The Tetons reveal their grandeur, not only in towering summits and glacial lakes, but also in the countless details of stone, water, weather, and living things that give the landscape depth. Looking closely at the mountains, it becomes clear their sharp forms were shaped not by a single force, but by many working across long spans of time. The jagged skyline carries the marks of uplift, ice, frost, and erosion, each leaving its quiet signature. Some of the striking features in the range are the cirques carved by glaciers high along the mountain walls. These amphitheater-shaped basins were hollowed by ice grinding slowly into rock. From them, glaciers once flowed outward, helping shape the ridges and valleys below. Even after much of the ice retreated, those forms remained, giving the mountains a sculpted sharpness that distinguishes the Tetons from older, more worn ranges. The Cathedral Group stands among the striking clusters of peaks in the range. Here, Grand Teton rises beside neighboring summits in formation. Mount Owen, the second highest peak, adds to that rugged skyline. Together, these mountains appear severe, yet they were shaped through processes both patient and relentless. Ice cut them, water refined them. Winter frost continues to fracture stone. Even now, cliffs shed rock in slow acts of change. At lower elevations, glacial moraines form ridges that shape the valley floor. These were left as ancient glaciers paused or retreated, depositing rock and debris gathered through long movement. Many lakes in the park sit behind these moraines, their existence tied directly to vanished ice. It is possible to stand beside a peaceful lake and realize its basin was born in grinding glacial force. The elevation changes across the park create many distinct worlds. Near valley floor wetlands and willow flats support one community of life. Mid-elevation forests hold another. Higher alpine zones sustain forms adapted to harsher conditions. From about 6,300 feet to nearly 14,000 feet, the park rises through remarkable ecological variety. That variety helps support one of the largest concentrations of large mammals in the lower 48 states. Moose move through willow-rich wetlands where water gathers. Their long, dark forms often emerge quietly from morning mist. Bison graze open flats where grasses ripple beneath shifting wind. Elk move through forests and meadows in seasonal patterns shaped over generations. Pronghorn add another dimension to the open country. Among the fastest land mammals in North America, they belong to these broad sage landscapes. Their migrations link the park to lands beyond its boundaries. They remind us the life of this region cannot be understood through park borders alone. Smaller lives also shape the character of the place. In wet meadows, amphibians breed in seasonal pools. In alpine slopes, pikas gather vegetation to store against winter. Marmots whistle among rocks warmed by summer sun. Beavers shape wetlands in ways that ripple outward through entire habitats. Even where mountains dominate the horizon, much of the park's richness lies in these quieter patterns. Bird life shifts with season and habitat. Bald eagles nest along waterways. Waterfowl gather in marshes and lakes. Migratory birds pass through along major flyways. In open country, ravens ride thermal currents, their calls sometimes echoing against cliffs. In forests, smaller songbirds move through conifers with constant hidden activity. One of the great pleasures of the park lies in noticing how water gathers in so many forms. Snowfields feed streams, streams join rivers, springs emerge cold and clear from mountain slopes. Alpine lakes hold astonishing transparency, often because their waters carry few nutrients. Looking into them can feel like looking into depth itself. Jackson Lake brings another expression of mountain water. Broad and high, it carries both grandeur and quiet. Wind can roughen its surface into silver texture, while calmer hours leave reflections drifting across stillness. Along shorelines, forests meet water, in soft contrast to the severe stone above. Farther south, Jenny Lake has long drawn admiration for its beauty, though beauty alone does not explain its power. There is something about water held beneath steep mountains that creates a feeling of closeness to geological time. The lake seems calm, yet its existence began in glacial force. The Snake River continues through all this as both artery and sculptor. Its oxbows, floodplains, and riparian habitats support life. In spring, snowmelt swells its current. In autumn, lower waters reveal changing textures of bank and channel. Along its course, the river binds mountain and valley together. Weather often transforms familiar places into entirely new scenes. Summer storms may gather over ridges while sunlight still touches parts of the valley. Rain can move in silver curtains beneath dark clouds. Lightning flashes over peaks. Then calm may return, as though nothing happened. Mountain weather carries a rhythm of change that keeps the landscape always alive. Autumn brings another transformation. Aspen groves turn gold against dark conifers. Valley grasses shift toward muted bronze. Crisp air settles over mornings. Many photographers come during the elk rut when bugling carries through open country, a sound as much a part of the season as color. Winter reveals perhaps the park's most austere beauty. Snow gathers in vast silence. Temperatures may fall far below zero, yet life continues. Tracks mark fresh snow. Rivers remain partly open in moving places. Light on winter mornings can turn the range pale gold above blue shadow. The Tetons also inspire through contrast. Their steep rise from the valley creates bold drama, yet much of the park feels peaceful. There are places of grand vistas, but also quiet forest trails, marsh edges alive with birds, still ponds holding reflections, and hidden lakes reach through long walks. Grandeur and intimacy exist together. Perhaps this balance explains why the park feels so complete. It offers not merely dramatic scenery, but layered experience. Geology, ecology, weather, water, wildlife, and season all remain visible. Nothing feels separate. Everything belongs to the same unfolding whole. The mountains rise because the earth moved. Glaciers shape them. Rivers continue refining them. Plants root in soils built through those processes. Animals move through habitats those forces created. Even the human stories tied to the valley emerged within that larger setting. Beyond the mountain summits and glacial valleys, Grand Teton National Park is also shaped by long human history and conservation. Evidence of people in this region reaches back more than 10,000 years, showing that these valleys, rivers, and mountain passes have been known far longer than the park itself. For generations, indigenous peoples, including the Shoshone, moved through this landscape with deep understanding of seasons, wildlife, and terrain. They knew where game traveled, where plants could be gathered, where rivers could be crossed, and how mountain weather could shift. The land was not separate from life, but part of it. Much later, fur trappers entered this country and gave names to places already long known by others. The name Teton is often linked to French trappers of the early 19th century. By the late 1800s, climbers had begun testing the Great Peaks. The first recorded ascent of Grand Teton in the year 1898 helped establish the mountain's place in mountaineering history. Even now, climbers continue to approach these peaks each summer, moving across steep granite, high ridges, and exposed routes shaped by ancient ice. The park itself was established in the year 1929, though at first it protected mainly the mountain core. Much of Jackson Hole remained outside the park boundary, yet the valley below the mountains was essential to wildlife, rivers, wetlands, and seasonal migrations. In time, it became clear that protecting peaks alone was not enough. The wider living landscape mattered as much as the skyline. That understanding helped shape an important conservation effort in American history. John D. Rockefeller Jr. quietly acquired lands in Jackson Hole to help keep them from development. Those lands later contributed to broader protection, and in the year 1950, the park expanded to include much of the valley. That expansion changed the meaning of Grand Teton National Park. It became not only a preserve of mountains, but protection for a larger ecological whole. That larger whole includes open sage country, river corridors, wetlands, forests, and migration routes. It is part of what makes the park inseparable from the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Animals move across these connected lands according to old rhythms. Protection here has always meant more than scenery. It has meant preserving relationships between landforms, water, wildlife, and season. The nearby National Elk Refuge forms part of that larger living system. Seasonal elk migrations have long shaped this region. In colder months, large herds gather on winter range, and in warmer seasons, they move again through valleys and mountain country. Their movements belong to the old pulse of the landscape. To witness elk in these open lands beneath the Tetons is to glimpse a continuity much older than park boundaries. Grand Teton also protects rich wetlands, where life gathers in quieter forms. Trumpeter swans move through marshes and ponds with calm grace, often in waters bordered by willow and reeds. Bald eagles nest near rivers and lakes. Waterfowl gather in protected shallows. Beaver-shaped wetlands support many species beyond those easily seen. These quieter habitats may not have the dramatic appearance of mountain summits, yet they are central to the life of the park. The Snake River supports native cutthroat trout in cold flowing waters fed by snowmelt. These fish belong to river systems shaped over long geological and seasonal cycles. Water, wildlife, and geology remain linked at every scale. Even what happens in high snowfields can shape life far below. Higher in the mountains, another important ecological story unfolds in whitebark pine forests. These hardy trees grow in severe conditions near upper elevations, where wind, snow, and cold define the environment. Their seeds provide food for wildlife, including bears. Yet whitebark pine faces challenges from disease and climate pressures. Even ancient mountain systems hold fragile parts. The park also lies near the boundary of major geologic provinces, adding to the complexity of the region. Layers of ancient seabeds preserved in rock, evidence of fault movement, and glacial shaping all meet here. Few landscapes reveal so much geological history so visibly. Marine fossils found in mountain rocks quietly suggest worlds unimaginably different from the present. Climbers experience these geological forms in direct ways. Granite ridges, couloirs, and exposed summits reflect the shaping force of ice and weather. Some backcountry climbing routes require registration, a reminder that these mountains remain serious terrain. Lightning is a major hazard in summer. Afternoon storms can rise quickly over the range, changing conditions in a matter of minutes. Yet for many people, the park is known as much through quiet places as through summits. Mormon Row stands as one of those places where human history and mountain landscape meet. The old barns have become iconic, but beyond their familiar image, they suggest lives shaped by climate, isolation, and hard land. Small homesteads stood beneath immense peaks, and that contrast still carries power. Signal Mountain offers another way of understanding the park. From above, Jackson Hole spreads outward in a broad mosaic of forest, river, wetland, and meadow. The mountains can be seen not as isolated scenery, but as part of a larger connected world. That perspective reveals something essential about the park. Grand Teton receives millions of visitors each year, drawn by wildlife viewing, hiking, climbing, boating, and the beauty of the range. Yet even with many visitors, much of the park retains a sense of spaciousness. There are still places where silence dominates, where only wind, birds, or distant water can be heard. That sense of openness has inspired generations of photographers, climbers, scientists, and travelers. Oxbow Bend at sunrise, the Barns of Mormon Row, the view from Signal Mountain, alpine trails beneath the cathedral group, all have become part of how people imagine this landscape. Yet their deeper value lies in what they reveal about the whole. Grand Teton is often described as one of America's most scenic landscapes, but scenic beauty alone does not explain its lasting fascination. The park holds drama in its mountains, richness in its ecosystems, and depth in its history. Geological forces, migrations, glaciers, rivers, and human choices all helped shape what remains today. In that sense, Grand Teton National Park is not only a preserved landscape, but an active living system. Its beauty comes not from stillness alone, but from processes continuing across time. Mountains rise, weather shapes them, wildlife moves, rivers flow, seasons return, and through all of it, the Tetons remain a clear expression of living wild country in North America. Grand Teton National Park is also a landscape of movement across seasons, nowhere more visible than in the lives of animals that move through the valley, forests, rivers, and mountains. Because the park forms part of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, wildlife here often lives on a scale larger than the park itself. Animals travel ancient routes shaped by snow, food, water, elevation, and instinct. Those migrations are part of what makes this region feel so alive. Moose are among the animals most closely associated with the Tetons. They are often seen in willow flats, where wetlands gather along streams and river edges. These places offer both food and cover, and moose move through them with a quiet, deliberate presence. In warmer months, they may stand feeding in shallow water among aquatic plants. In colder seasons, they shift toward places where browse remains available through snow. Their lives follow the rhythm of habitat and season. Elk move on a larger scale through this country. Seasonal migrations connect valley floors, mountain meadows, forests, and winter range. In spring and summer, they rise toward richer forage. In autumn and winter, they return toward lower elevations. These migrations have shaped the ecology of the region for generations and remain among the great wildlife patterns of the American West. During autumn, the elk rut adds another dimension to the landscape. The sound of bugling may carry across meadows and forest edges in cool morning air. That sound has become part of the seasonal identity of the Tetons. It belongs as much to the place as river bends and mountain light. Bison add a different presence. They move through open grasslands with great calm and strength, often seeming as much a part of the valley as the sage itself. Once nearly lost from much of this region, Their continued presence reflects the success of long conservation efforts. To see bison beneath the Tetons is to glimpse something ancient that still endures. Pronghorn bring another kind of wonder. Among the fastest land mammals in North America, they move across sage country with speed and alertness. Their migrations rank among the great long-distance land migrations on the continent. Those journeys connect Grand Teton to lands beyond park borders, reminding us again that wild systems do not stop at mapped lines. The return of wolves to the greater ecosystem added another layer to those relationships. Predators influence more than prey numbers. They can affect movement patterns, grazing behavior, and broader ecological balance. In that sense, wolves belong not only to wildlife history, but to the continuing story of the land itself. Birdlife gives the park another dimension of motion. Bald eagles move along rivers and lakes. Trumpeter swans glide through wetlands. Ospreys hunt over water. Seasonal migrations bring many bird species through the region each year. Some remain to nest. Others pass through along ancient flyways. The skies above the Tetons carry movements as old as those on the ground. Wetlands are vital to much of this life. Beaver-shaped ponds, marshes, and willow flats support breeding grounds for amphibians, birds, insects, and mammals. These places often appear quiet, yet they hold activity. Much of the park's richness depends on habitats like these that might seem subtle beside dramatic mountains. Beavers themselves help shape that richness. Through dams and ponds, they alter water flow, create habitat, and support wetland communities. It is one of many examples of how even small animals can influence entire landscapes. At higher elevations, different forms of life appear. Pikas live among rocky talus slopes where winters are severe and growing seasons short. Through summer, they gather vegetation and store it for the cold months ahead. Marmots live in similar country, often seen sunning near rocky slopes or heard in their sharp whistling calls. These alpine lives seem small beside great peaks, yet they belong intimately to mountain ecosystems. Wildflowers bring another form of seasonal abundance. Across alpine meadows and lower open country, summer blooms can spread in variety. The park holds over 1,000 species of vascular plants, and during the brief mountain growing season, many flourish at once. Color rises from meadows that may lie snow-covered much of the year. Elevation shapes where different plant communities grow. Sagebrush dominates much of the valley floor. Forests of pine and fir rise along slopes. Higher still, alpine tundra begins where trees give way to a harsher but still living world. This layering of habitats helps support the park's great diversity. That diversity includes species often less noticed but equally important. Insects pollinate wildflowers. Amphibians breed in seasonal waters. Aquatic life depends on cold streams and wetlands. Every part supports another. The richness of the park lies partly in these relationships. The Snake River ties many of these habitats together. Its riparian corridors support wildlife movement, nesting birds, fish, and plant communities. Native cutthroat trout belong to these waters, linking mountain snow to aquatic life through seasonal flow. Rivers in the Tetons are not only scenic features, they are living systems. Seasonal weather influences all of this. Snow depth can shape winter survival. Spring runoff affects wetlands and river habitats. Summer drought or abundant moisture influences forage and migration. Wildlife lives in continual response to climate and season. Whitebark pine provides one example of those connections. These hardy, high-elevation trees support wildlife through their seeds, yet they face pressures from disease and changing conditions. Their story reflects how even mountain ecosystems thought resilient can hold delicate balances. The park's concentration of large mammals is often noted as one of the richest in the lower 48 states. Yet what makes that possible is not simply protection of animals, but protection of processes. Migration continues, predators remain, habitats connect, rivers still flow, largely unbroken. Those conditions are increasingly rare. This is part of why wildlife viewing is one of the main attractions in the park. People come hoping to see moose in willow flats, bison in open meadows, or swans in quiet marshes. Yet what often leaves the deeper impression is not a single sighting, but the sense of life woven through the landscape. To watch pronghorn moving across sagebrush with the Tetons beyond, or elk gathering in autumn grass, is to feel something enduring. These are not isolated scenes arranged for beauty. They are expressions of living systems still functioning. Grand Teton often appears famous for mountains, but the life moving beneath those peaks gives the park much of its soul. Stone alone would not create the same place. It is mountains with migration, wetlands with birds, forests with bears, rivers with trout, and meadows with grazing herds that make the landscape feel complete. Perhaps that is why wildlife in the Tetons can feel so moving. Animals appear not as separate subjects against scenery, but as part of the land's own identity. Moose belong to willow marshes, elk belong to open valleys, pikas belong to alpine stone. Each seems inseparable from place. Grand Teton National Park also reveals itself through the high country, where trails rise from forests into alpine basins, passes, ridges, and summit country shaped by ice and weather. Some of the most memorable features of the park lie not along valley roads, but in these upper landscapes, where geology becomes immediate and the mountains show their sharper character. The park contains more than 200 miles of hiking trails, ranging from valley paths through lakes and forests to steep routes climbing into rugged terrain. Those trails offer more than access. They reveal how varied the park truly is. A path may begin in sagebrush, enter conifer forest, rise beside streams, cross wildflower meadows, and reach rocky alpine slopes, all within a single journey. Few places show ecological change so clearly through elevation. Taggart Lake has long offered one of the classic introductions to this mountain world. The trail rises gently through forest before opening to clear water beneath the peaks. It carries a quiet beauty, yet it also reveals glacial history in the basin that holds the lake. What appears serene was shaped through immense force. Farther into the range, many backcountry lakes lie in glacial cirques beneath steep granite walls. Some sit below hanging valleys, where waterfalls descend from snowfields. Others rest in secluded basins, reached only through long climbs. The park contains more than 100 alpine and backcountry lakes, each adding to the hidden complexity of the range. Among the great routes through this high country is the Teton Crest Trail. It crosses elevated terrain with broad views over ridges, valleys, and distant summits. The route passes through landscapes shaped by ancient ice, over high passes, and through alpine meadows that bloom briefly in summer. It has become a celebrated long trail of the American West. Arates link some of these high summits in narrow ridgelines formed by glaciers working on multiple sides. Cirques hollowed into the mountains remain as evidence of ancient ice. Glacial striations can still be found etched into rock. These are not abstract geological ideas, but visible features written into the landscape. Grand Teton itself has drawn climbers for generations. Its summit has become one of the classic mountaineering goals in North America. Reaching it involves far more than hiking. Climbers move through exposed rock, steep routes, and mountain conditions that demand judgment. Some backcountry routes require registration, reflecting both popularity and the seriousness of the terrain. Lightning is one of the major hazards in these mountains. Summer storms can build rapidly, especially in afternoon warmth. A clear morning can become stormy in surprisingly little time. For climbers high on exposed ridges, this matters greatly. Mountain weather here has always shaped human movement as surely as it shapes stone. At higher elevations, alpine tundra begins where forest gives way to a more austere world. Trees disappear. Wind grows stronger. Growing seasons shorten dramatically. Yet life continues. Hardy plants cling low to the ground. Tiny flowers bloom in sheltered places. Pikas gather food among talus. Marmots live in rocky slopes where winters are long and severe. These upper elevations also hold active glaciers, among them Teton Glacier, still clinging high in the range. Though much reduced from the great ice masses that shape the mountains, they remain part of the living landscape. They feed streams, preserve snow and ice through seasons, and offer visible connection to the Ice Age that carved so much of the park. Glacial moraines add another layer to the mountain story. These ridges of rock and debris mark former edges of ice. Many lie along valley floors and around lakes, recording where glaciers once stood. They remind us that today's peaceful mountain scenery emerged through immense and restless forces. Signal Mountain offers a different but equally revealing high perspective. From there, the relationship between mountains and valley becomes unmistakable. Jackson Hole spreads wide below. The Snake River winds in long curves. Forests, wetlands, lakes, and sage flats appear as one connected mosaic. The view helps explain why the valley matters as much as the peaks. One remarkable quality of the Tetons is the absence of broad foothills. Because of steep fault uplift, mountains rise abruptly from the valley floor. This makes even lower elevations feel close to great peaks. It also contributes to the dramatic impression that has made the range so famous. The range stretches roughly 40 miles north to south, yet within that span holds extraordinary variation. Hidden canyons, hanging valleys, ridgelines, snowfields, and alpine basins create a sense of endless detail. Even those who know the park well continue discovering secluded places beyond the better-known views. High country also reveals how severe winter can be. Snow accumulations in upper elevations may exceed 400 inches. Cornices form along ridges. Avalanches shape some slopes. What appears accessible in summer becomes formidable in winter. Seasonal contrast is part of the mountain's identity. That severity helps shape ecology as much as scenery. Snowpack influences spring runoff. Meltwater feeds rivers. Alpine conditions determine where plants can grow. Wildlife adapts to narrow seasonal windows. Everything in the high country reflects limits set by elevation and climate. Marine fossils found in some mountain rocks add still another layer of wonder. To stand in alpine terrain and realize some rocks formed from ancient seabeds expands the imagination of time. These mountains carry stories far older than their youthful shape suggests. Perhaps this is one reason the high country has such power. It brings many elements together at once. Geology, weather, wildlife, elevation, silence and scale meet there in concentrated form. The Tetons reveal themselves differently from above than below. To walk an alpine trail, hear marmots among stone, pass lingering snowfields in summer, or stand beside a high cirque lake is to encounter another face of the park. It is a face shaped less by valley breadth and more by mountain intimacy. Grand Teton National Park is often known for its famous skyline, yet the deeper character of the range lives in these upper places. In glacial basins, ridgelines, high passes, and granite summits, the mountains show how they were made and why they remain so compelling. And in that high country, where ice-carved stone and weather still rules much of life, the Tetons reveal some of their oldest and most enduring truths. Grand Teton National Park also reveals its character through the broad valley of Jackson Hole, because without the valley, the mountains would not carry the same astonishing presence. The peaks rise so dramatically partly because the land below lies open and spacious, a great basin shaped by faulting, glacial deposits, rivers, and ancient outwash. Jackson Hole is not merely foreground for mountains, it is one half of the landscape. The valley floor sits more than 6,000 feet above sea level, yet compared with the summits, it feels expansive and low, giving the range its immense relief. Sagebrush plains stretch outward in broad open country, where wind moves through grasses and wildlife crosses long visible distances. This openness gives the Tetons much of their bold simplicity. Mountains rise, valley spreads. Few places express that contrast so clearly. The valley itself was shaped through both tectonic and glacial processes. As the Teton Fault lifted the mountains, Jackson Hole settled downward. Later glaciers helped shape and refine the basin, while meltwater and outwash spread sediments across the floor. What appears today as peaceful meadow and sage country carries the imprint of enormous geological change. Glacial outwash plains helped form many of the soils and broad surfaces that now support grasslands, wetlands, and forests. Moraines left by retreating ice-shaped ridges and lake basins. Even much of the valley vegetation grows where ancient glaciers once moved. The marks of ice remain written into what at first seems gentle terrain. Jackson Hole supports rich riparian habitats along the Snake River and its side channels. Cottonwood groves line waterways. Wet meadows hold moisture into warmer months. Willow flats support moose and bird life. The valley is not empty space between mountains, but a biologically rich landscape in its own right. Among the most celebrated features of the valley is the Snake River and its great bends through open country. The oxbows are famous for good reason. They reveal the meeting of mountain, water, and sky in remarkable harmony. Yet beyond beauty, they show how rivers shape the valley through movement, floodplain processes, and habitat creation. Oxbow Bend remains a classic place to witness this. Calm waters may reflect surrounding peaks and trees with extraordinary clarity. Birds gather in marsh edges, water moves quietly beneath reflected mountains. The place feels both grand and intimate at once. The broad valley also makes wildlife visible in ways dense forests often do not. Bison grazing in open sage, elk moving through meadows, or pronghorn crossing long distances can often be seen against a vast, uncluttered landscape. That openness shapes the experience of wildlife here as much as it shapes ecology. Pronghorn in particular belong to this open country. Their speed evolved partly for landscapes where distance matters. Watching them move through sagebrush beneath the Tetons carries a sense of deep adaptation between animal and place. Sagebrush itself deserves notice. It defines much of the valley floor, carrying subtle silver-green tones and supporting a surprising web of life. In wind, it moves almost like water. In dry air, it carries a distinct scent. Though less dramatic than forests or peaks, sage country is essential to the identity of Jackson Hole. Signal Mountain rises from this broader valley and offers one of the clearest views of how all these pieces fit together. From its heights, the Snake River can be traced through forest and meadow. Jackson Lake lies northward. The mountain front rises sharply beyond the open basin. Seen from above, the valley appears as a living mosaic. Jackson Lake adds another layer to the northern valley landscape. Broad and high, it gathers mountain runoff and reflects weather, season, and shifting light. Its shoreline, coves, and open waters support birds, fish, and varied habitats, while also expanding the sense of spaciousness in the park. Along parts of the valley, beavers help shape wetlands and small water systems, influencing habitat in ways often invisible at first glance. Marshes, ponds, and channels created or altered by water and beaver activity support amphibians, waterfowl, and many quieter forms of life. Much of the valley's richness lies in these subtler places. The valley also changes profoundly with season. In spring, snowmelt swells rivers and greens begin spreading through meadows. Wetlands fill and migratory birds return. There is a sense of release after winter. Summer brings long light, flowering meadows, active wildlife, and open mountain access. Valley grasses move in warm wind. Rivers run cold with snow-fed water. Open country can feel almost luminous in morning and evening light. Autumn transforms Jackson Hole into another landscape altogether. Aspens turn gold in groves along slopes and streams. Sagebrush flats take on muted autumn tones. Elk bugling may carry through cool air. The valley seems both quieter and more alive. Winter strips the valley to elemental forms. Snow spreads across sage country. Bison move through white ground. River corridors remain dark threads through frozen landscapes. The openness that feels expansive in summer becomes austere and immense in winter. Because the valley lies within a large, intact, temperate ecosystem, these seasonal changes unfold within ecological relationships still functioning at large scale. That fact gives Jackson Hole unusual significance. It is not only scenic open country, it remains part of a living wild system. Human history, too, is woven into the valley. Mormon Row stands within this open landscape, its historic barns and homesteads reflecting another chapter of life shaped by climate, isolation, and hope. These structures appear small beneath the mountains, yet that contrast gives them power. Photographers have long been drawn to Jackson Hole because the valley offers scale as well as beauty. The abrupt mountain front, open sage country, river bends, and changing weather create scenes of uncommon clarity. Yet beyond images, the valley offers something harder to define, a sense of breadth rare in modern landscapes. Without the valley, the Tetons would still be magnificent mountains, but they would not be this landscape. Their identity depends on the open basin from which they rise. Mountain and valley belong together. That is one reason the absence of foothills matters so much. Because the transition from valley floor to steep mountain wall is so direct, the range appears almost to spring from open earth. It creates a skyline unlike almost anywhere else. Grand Teton National Park is often imagined through summits, but Jackson Hole gives those summits context, scale, ecology, and meaning. It is where much of the life of the park unfolds. Rivers wind there. Wildlife moves there. Seasons show themselves there in broad, visible ways. And across that open valley, with sagebrush in the foreground and granite peaks rising abruptly beyond, the Tetons reveal one of the most distinctive mountain and valley landscapes on Earth. The colder seasons reveal another important side of Grand Teton National Park, because winter does not simply cover the landscape. It changes how nearly everything functions. Snow settles across the valley, builds deeply in the high country, shapes where animals move, feeds rivers later in the year, and transforms familiar trails into quiet winter routes. At higher elevations, snowfall can exceed 400 inches, creating a long-stored supply of water that will later become spring runoff. The mountains hold that snow through much of the cold season, while the valley below becomes a wide white basin marked by tracks, river channels, and dark lines of forest. Winter temperatures can fall well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and that level of cold gives the park a severe beauty. In this season, the Tetons feel stripped to their strongest elements, with stone, snow, water, and wildlife all made more visible by contrast. Cross-country skiing has become a classic winter activity in the park, partly because it fits the quieter pace of the season. Trails and valley routes that feel busy in summer become slower and more open under snow. Skiers move through forests, across open flats, and along routes where the mountains rise in clear view beyond the white ground. The cold affects sound as much as sight. Snow absorbs noise, and even wide open places can feel unusually still. Yet the landscape is not empty. Moose move through willow flats where they can still browse. Bison use their strength to push through snow and reach grasses below. River corridors remain important because moving water keeps some places open when much of the valley is frozen. That snow-covered valley is also part of the park's larger water cycle. Winter storms build the snowpack, then spring gradually releases it. As warmer weather returns, snowmelt feeds creeks, wetlands, lakes, and the Snake River. Spring runoff can be dramatic, with rushing water carrying the stored weight of winter down into the valley. Rivers rise, wet meadows fill, and plant growth begins again in places that were silent and frozen only weeks before. This seasonal movement of water supports fish, birds, mammals, and plant communities. It also reminds us that winter is not a pause in the park's life. It is preparation for the abundance that follows. The Snake River remains central to that renewal. Its cold waters support native cutthroat trout, and fly fishing has long been one of the quieter human activities associated with the park. The appeal is not only the fish themselves, but the setting of clear moving water beneath high peaks and open sky. Healthy trout habitat depends on clean water, appropriate stream conditions, and connected river systems. The river also supports riparian habitats along its banks, where willows, cottonwoods, wetlands, birds and mammals depend on moisture and seasonal flow. In this way, a fish in the river is connected to mountain snow, glacial melt, valley vegetation, and the wider condition of the watershed. Plant life in Grand Teton is equally tied to elevation, moisture, and season. The park contains more than 1,000 species of vascular plants, ranging from sagebrush and grasses on the valley floor to forests, alpine meadow plants, and hardy tundra species near the upper limits of growth. In summer, wildflowers bloom across meadows in a brief but vivid season, taking advantage of warmth and moisture before cold returns. Higher elevations are less forgiving, yet alpine tundra supports low-growing plants adapted to wind, short summers, and poor soils. These plant communities are not only beautiful, they feed insects, shelter small animals, stabilize soils, and help define the habitats that larger animals use. Whitebark pine adds another important layer to the park's high-elevation ecology. These trees grow in difficult conditions near the upper forest zones, where snow, wind, and cold shape nearly every part of life. Their seeds provide food for wildlife, including grizzly bears, linking a tree on a mountain slope to the seasonal feeding patterns of one of the region's most powerful animals. Yet whitebark pine forests are threatened by disease and climate change, making them a vulnerable part of the ecosystem. Their decline would not affect only the trees themselves. It would alter food webs and high-elevation habitats that depend on them. The strength of the park lies in how these quieter facts connect. Snowfall feeds rivers. Rivers support trout and wetlands. Wetlands support amphibians, swans, beavers, and eagles. Plants respond to moisture, elevation, and season. Whitebark pine supports wildlife high in the mountains. None of these elements stands alone. They form the living framework beneath the famous skyline, giving Grand Teton National Park its depth beyond the first view of the peaks. Across winter snow, spring runoff, summer wildflowers, autumn wetlands, cold rivers, high forests, and dark night skies, the park continues to show how a mountain landscape works as a whole. The Tetons may draw attention first because of their dramatic rise from the valley, but the lasting richness of the park comes from the systems that keep functioning beneath and around them. Water moves through the seasons. Plants return after snow. Animals follow food and shelter. Rivers carry life through the valley. High trees feed bears. Wetlands hold birds and amphibians. Under clear night skies, the whole landscape remains connected, active, and alive. The Teton Fault remains central to understanding the range. It extends along the eastern base of the mountains and is responsible for much of the dramatic relief visible today. Though movement along such faults occurs over long spans of time, the landscape continues to bear evidence of those forces. The mountains have been lifted. The valley has dropped. Erosion works against uplift. That balance between rising and wearing away has shaped the range into its present form. One reason the Tetons appear so youthful is that glacial carving sharpened peaks that might otherwise have weathered into softer forms. During repeated ice ages, glaciers moved through the mountains, cutting valleys, deepening basins, sharpening ridges, and helping create the dramatic skyline visible today. Many of the sharpest features owe as much to ice as to uplift. Cirques remain among the clearest examples of this glacial shaping. These bowl-shaped basins carved high into mountain walls often cradle snowfields, lakes, or former glacier sites. They are found throughout the range and help give the mountains their sculpted appearance. Some of the alpine lakes already discussed rest in these glacially carved forms, linking beauty directly to geological process. Arates provide another striking example. These narrow ridge lines were sharpened where glaciers carved from multiple sides, leaving steep edges that connect summits in dramatic profiles. Seen from valley overlooks or high trails, they help explain why the Tetons often appear so jagged and severe compared with older worn ranges. Glacial moraines across the park tell another part of the story. These ridges of rock and debris were left where glaciers paused or retreated. Many shape valley floors and lake basins. Some visitors may walk along moraines without realizing they are moving over ancient markers of ice. Yet these features record former glacier boundaries, almost like signatures left in stone and soil. Even exposed rock surfaces sometimes preserve glacial striations. Faint scratches made as ice carrying embedded rock moved across bedrock. Such details can seem small beside towering summits, but they reveal the physical work of ice in remarkably direct ways. The mountains also preserve evidence of much older worlds. Marine fossils have been found in some of the rocks of the Tetons, reminders that material now lifted into alpine heights once formed in ancient seas. That fact can seem astonishing when standing among granite walls and snowfields, yet it deepens the sense of time held within the range. The park lies near the boundary of major geologic provinces, which contributes to the region's structural complexity. That setting helps make the Tetons not only beautiful mountains, but important landscapes for geological study. Scientists have long been drawn here because so many processes can be read so clearly. Elevation across the park ranges from roughly 6,300 feet to nearly 14,000 feet. That vertical span shapes climate, ecology, and the feel of the land itself. It also contributes to why the range contains such dramatic transitions over relatively short distances. The cathedral group remains among the clearest expressions of these geological forces. Grand Teton and neighboring summits rise in sharp clustered forms, shaped through uplift, glaciation, and long weathering. Mount Owen, standing close beside Grand Teton, reinforces that dramatic high skyline. Together, these peaks show the Tetons at their most severe and perhaps most iconic. Weather continues geological work in quieter ways. Frost enters cracks in rock, expands when frozen, and slowly breaks stone apart. Gravity pulls loosened material downslope. Streams carry sediment away. Cliffs shed fragments through time. Even now the mountains are being reshaped, though at a pace often too slow to notice directly. Glaciers still present in the park remain part of this continuing story. Though reduced compared with ancient ice masses, they are not merely remnants. They remain active expressions of ice in motion, however slow. They feed streams, preserve frozen water at elevation, and offer scientists clues about changing conditions. Lightning and storms also influence mountain environments more than they may first appear. Storm runoff shapes erosion. Snow accumulations affect glacier and stream systems. Wind redistributes snow and sculpts ridges. Climate and geology remain linked. The Tetons are often described as among the youngest mountain ranges in the Rockies. That youth is not about the age of the rock itself, much of which is ancient, but about the relative youth of the range's present form. It helps explain why the mountains retain such bold relief. One of the remarkable things about Grand Teton is how these processes remain legible even without technical training. A visitor can see steep fault uplift in the abrupt rise from valley floor. Glacial carving appears in U-shaped valleys and cirques. Moraines mark old ice margins. Fossils suggest vanished seas. The landscape teaches through visibility. This clarity is one reason the park has long inspired not only visitors, but geologists, climbers, and naturalists. It offers beauty, but also understanding. It allows people to sense how Earth shapes itself. Even Jackson Hole carries this geological story. The broad basin below the range exists because of the same structural forces that lifted the mountains. Valley and peaks are not separate features, but parts of one system. Their relationship is written into faulting, ice, and erosion. Grand Teton National Park holds many kinds of wonder, but geological wonder may be among its deepest. Wildlife moves with seasons. Rivers shift through valleys. Plants bloom and fade. Yet beneath all these living rhythms lies the structure of the land itself, shaped through upheaval, ice, and long spans of time. And in those sharp peaks, rising without foothills from the open valley floor, in cirques and moraines, fossils and fault lines, the Tetons continue showing how the Earth can build a landscape both severe and beautiful through the slow power of time. One of the clearest examples is migration. Animals do not experience the land through park borders. Elk move through valleys, forests, and mountain ranges according to season. Pronghorn cross long routes shaped by ancient instinct. Predators range across broad territories. These movements depend on connected landscapes, and the Tetons remain important because those connections still survive. Bison restoration offers one example of how fragile and resilient those relationships can be. In the 19th century, bison nearly disappeared from much of the American West. Their continued presence in this region reflects long conservation work. To see bison moving beneath the Tetons is not only to witness wildlife, but to see a restored part of ecological history. Predators also reveal the significance of connected ecosystems. Grizzly bears require large landscapes with varied seasonal food sources. Wolves range over broad territories. Their presence depends on more than isolated protected land. It depends on functioning ecological scale. Grand Teton matters partly because it contributes to that scale. Rivers strengthen those connections. The Snake River does not merely pass through scenery. It links mountains, wetlands, fish habitat, birds, and plant communities. Water moving from snowfields and glaciers enters streams, joins rivers, feeds wetlands, and shapes life far from where it began. In that sense, mountain snow may help sustain life many miles away. Native cutthroat trout reflect that connectedness clearly. Their survival depends on cold water, healthy stream systems, seasonal flow, and broader watershed conditions. A fish in the river carries within its existence the condition of mountain snowpack, stream habitat, and valley ecology. Bird migrations reveal another dimension of ecological connection. The park lies along important migratory pathways, and seasonal bird movement links these mountains to regions beyond them. Birds arriving in spring or passing through autumn connect the Tetons to continental patterns older than human borders. Wetlands support many of these connections. Amphibians breed in seasonal waters. Waterfowl depend on marsh habitats. Insects emerge from wet places and feed birds and fish. Beaver-altered waters create habitat that supports many species at once. The richness of the ecosystem lies partly in these layered relationships. Plants are equally part of these connections. Alpine flowers support pollinators. Forests shelter birds and mammals. Whitebark pine feeds wildlife. Sagebrush communities support animals adapted specifically to open, dry country. Each plant community contributes to ecological structure. The park's variety of habitats is one reason so much life can exist within a relatively compact geography. Open sage valleys, river corridors, forests, alpine tundra, wetlands, rocky slopes, and glacial basins each support different communities, yet all remain linked through water, climate, and movement. Seasonal change reinforces those links. Snowpack influences spring runoff. Runoff influences wetlands and forage. Forage affects migration and breeding. Weather shapes plant growth. Predators respond to prey movement. Everything touches something else. Conservation in Grand Teton has long reflected this understanding. Protecting valley lands as well as mountains helped preserve migration routes and habitat continuity. That broader vision remains one of the reasons the park holds such ecological value today. Even the park's popularity with visitors reflects these living systems. Wildlife viewing draws many people because animals are often visible within functioning habitat rather than isolated refuges. To see moose in willow flats or pronghorn in sage country is to witness species in landscapes that still fit them. Climate pressures and disease threats, such as those affecting whitebark pine, remind us these connections can also be vulnerable. Disturbance in one part of a system can ripple outward. That makes ecological understanding inseparable from conservation. Perhaps that is what distinguishes a true ecosystem from scenery. In scenery, elements may appear side by side. In an ecosystem, they interact. Grand Teton reveals those interactions constantly. Snow feeds rivers. Rivers support wetlands. Wetlands support birds. Forests shelter mammals. Migration links distant valleys. Predators shape movement. The land lives through relationships. This understanding also changes how the mountains themselves are seen. They are not only dramatic stone forms, they gather snow, shape watersheds, create elevational habitats, and influence weather. Even the peaks participate in ecological process. The Tetons often inspire wonder through their skyline, but ecological wonder may be just as profound. To realize these mountains are part of a vast, large, functioning, temperate ecosystem deepens the meaning of every river bend, meadow, and animal track. Another important part of Grand Teton National Park is that the landscape is shaped not only by mountains, water, ice, and wildlife, but also by disturbance and renewal. It can be tempting to think of wilderness as something preserved in perfect stillness, yet much of nature remains healthy because change continues through cycles of disruption and recovery. In the Tetons, fire, storms, floods, avalanches, insects, and climate all play roles in shaping living systems. These forces may appear destructive at first glance, yet they are often part of how the landscape renews itself. Wildfire has long been part of these mountain ecosystems. Before modern park boundaries existed, fires moved through forests as natural processes shaped by lightning, drought, wind, and fuel. Some fires burned hot and dramatic. Others moved lower through forest floors, thinning understory and altering habitat in quieter ways. Fire is not separate from these forests. It helped shape them. Lodgepole pine forests offer one of the clearest examples. In some places, these trees are closely tied to fire ecology. Their regeneration can depend on disturbance opening space and releasing seeds. What may look after fire like loss can begin a new cycle of growth. Young forest may rise where old forest once stood. Sunlight reaches ground long shaded. Different plant communities emerge. Wildlife often responds as habitats change. Aspen groves can benefit from disturbance as well. After fire, young aspen shoots may return vigorously. Their bright trunks and autumn gold often seem symbols of calm beauty, yet their renewal can be linked to ecological upheaval. Even beauty sometimes rises from disturbance. Wildlife responds to these changes in varied ways. Some species use dense, mature forest. Others benefit from openings created after fire. Browsing animals may use new growth. Birds may occupy snags left standing after burns. Habitat shifts and life adjusts. The park's richness depends partly on this dynamism. Avalanches shape mountain slopes in similar ways. In steep high country, avalanches clear corridors through forests and influence vegetation patterns. What may seem simply hazard can also help create varied habitat. The mountains are not arranged into stable, finished form. They remain active. Flooding also belongs to these natural processes. Spring runoff can alter channels, reshape river edges, and influence wetlands. Floodplains exist partly because rivers move. This movement helps sustain riparian habitats that support birds, fish, beavers, and larger mammals. Even a changing river can be a healthy river. Storms carry similar influence. Wind can topple trees, open forest gaps, and alter structure. Heavy snow loads break branches and shape growth. Lightning may ignite fires. Weather is not merely background in the Tetons. It helps shape the living fabric of the park. Climate adds another layer of change, especially in alpine systems where conditions can be finely balanced. Active glaciers have diminished compared with earlier times. Snowpack patterns matter deeply because so much water in the park begins as snow. Changes in snow, melt timing, or high elevation temperatures can ripple outward into rivers, wetlands, forests, and wildlife. Whitebark pine reflects this vulnerability clearly. These high elevation trees face pressures from disease and changing climate conditions. Their story has become part of a larger conversation about resilience in mountain ecosystems, yet even here resilience often appears through adaptation as much as permanence. Resilience may be one of the quiet themes running through the Tetons. Forests recover after fire. Meadows return after deep winter. Wildlife adjusts to shifting seasons. Rivers reshape and continue. Glaciers retreat, yet their past still defines the land. Recovery often works slowly, but it works. Even insects play ecological roles in these cycles. Though often unnoticed, insects pollinate plants, support bird life, help recycle organic matter, and belong to food webs extending through the park. Life depends on many such small processes, often hidden beneath grand scenery. At larger scales, these relationships help explain why intact ecosystems matter. Because the Tetons remain connected to a broad functioning wild region, species often have room to respond to disturbance. Migration allows movement. Habitat variety allows adjustment. Ecological scale supports resilience. That scale becomes especially important as pressures increase. Conservation is not only preserving what is present, but sustaining the capacity of systems to endure change. In a landscape shaped through upheaval from the beginning, resilience becomes part of the story. Even the geology of the Tetons carries this theme. Fault uplift, glacial carving, erosion, avalanches, weathering, and river action all reflect landscapes formed through change rather than stability. The mountains themselves exist because disturbance shaped them. Seen this way, Grand Teton National Park holds not only scenic beauty, but lessons in persistence. Forests burn and return, snow falls and melts, rivers flood and settle, seasons strip and renew the land again and again. Wildness often survives through motion. This can be felt in quieter ways as well. A meadow filled with wildflowers may have emerged through long ecological succession. A forest may carry traces of old fire. A willow wetland may reflect past flooding. Every peaceful place may hold a more active history than first appears. Perhaps this deepens appreciation of the park. It is not beautiful because nothing changes. It is beautiful partly because so much does. Change has shaped its mountains, valleys, rivers, forests, and wildlife from the beginning. And across burned forest returning green, avalanche paths cutting mountain slopes, rivers shifting through floodplain, and snow feeding spring life once more, Grand Teton reveals another quiet truth. Wild landscapes remain alive because renewal continues. Grand Teton National Park also reveals richness through the lives of smaller creatures and quieter ecological relationships that can easily be missed beside towering peaks and large wildlife. Moose, bears, and elk often draw attention first, yet much of the park's living complexity rests in smaller forms of life, moving through wetlands, forests, rivers, meadows, and alpine slopes. These quieter lives help hold the whole system together. In mountain meadows, summer can bring extraordinary insect activity, though much of it passes almost unnoticed. Pollinators move among wildflowers during the brief growing season, helping support reproduction across alpine and valley plant communities. This relationship between flowers and insects belongs to the great seasonal pulse of the park. When meadows bloom, countless smaller exchanges begin. Those wildflower meadows can seem delicate, yet they arise in places shaped by snowmelt, soils, elevation, and short windows of warmth. Lupine, paintbrush, and many other species may brighten slopes and open country in summer. Their beauty is familiar, yet their ecological role runs deeper. They feed insects, they support birds, they stabilize soils. They belong to systems much larger than themselves. Bees, butterflies, beetles, and many lesser, noticed insects help sustain these mountain landscapes. Without pollinators, many flowering plants would struggle. Without insects, birds and amphibians would lose food sources. Much of the living richness of the park rests on such relationships, even if they remain mostly hidden. Wetlands hold another world of quieter life. Frogs and salamanders use seasonal pools and marsh edges as breeding grounds, where moisture allows fragile life cycles to continue. Amphibians are often indicators of environmental health because they respond quickly to changes in water quality and habitat. Their presence says something important about these protected waters. Dragonflies move over marshes and ponds in summer, part of food webs connecting aquatic and aerial life. Insects emerging from wet places help feed birds and fish. Water may seem calm at the surface, while beneath it, many forms of life move through their own intricate patterns. Streams and cold mountain waters support life beyond the better-known cutthroat trout. Aquatic insects form a crucial part of stream ecosystems, feeding fish and linking water to surrounding habitats. Even flowing water carries layered communities, often invisible from shore. Along rocky talus slopes, pikers continue their careful mountain lives. During warmer months, they gather vegetation and store it among rocks to survive winter. Their lives depend on the cool conditions of alpine terrain. Because they can be sensitive to changing temperatures, they have become species of interest in discussions of climate and mountain ecology. Marmots bring another presence to high country. Often seen resting near sun-warmed stone or heard through their sharp calls, they belong to alpine slopes in a way that feels ancient. Their lives follow seasons of abundance and long winter dormancy, shaped by the severe rhythms of elevation. Bird life reveals variety when looked at closely. Not only eagles and swans, but woodpeckers in forests, songbirds moving through conifers, waterbirds in marshes, and raptors riding thermals all belong to the park's living tapestry. Many species pass through only seasonally, linking the Tetons to much wider migrations. Ravens hold a special place in mountain landscapes. Their calls may echo near cliffs or open valleys, and their intelligence has long drawn fascination. They seem almost woven into the atmosphere of western mountains. Their presence adds another subtle thread to the character of the park. Even soils hold living complexity. Beneath forests and meadows, unseen communities of fungi, roots, microbes, and decomposers help sustain plant life. Fallen wood decays and feeds future growth. Nutrients cycle quietly through systems rarely noticed, yet fundamental to everything above ground. Forest life depends heavily on these hidden processes. Conifers rise through soils shaped by countless small exchanges. Mosses, lichens, fungi, and understory plants all contribute to ecological structure. A forest is not simply trees, it is layered life. Lichens in particular often cling to rock and bark in places where conditions seem severe, yet they persist in cold, wind, and exposed terrain. They can be among the quiet pioneers of difficult environments. Even stone surfaces may carry life. At alpine elevations where conditions appear almost too harsh for growth, small plants hug ground warmed by sun and protected from wind. Tiny flowers may bloom where snow lingered weeks before. Such resilience can feel astonishing in so austere a world. These smaller forms of life also support larger animals in countless ways. Insects feed birds and fish. Plants feed herbivores. Wetlands support amphibians that help balance insect populations. Everything touches something else. This pattern of connection appears again and again in the Tetons. Large visible wildlife often captures imagination, yet ecosystems rely equally on lives easy to overlook. A meadow humming with insects may be as vital as a valley crossed by elk. The park often teaches through such contrasts. Vast fault-lifted peaks rise over delicate alpine flowers. Great migrations unfold across valleys, while insects move from bloom to bloom. A cold glacial lake may appear still, while microscopic life moves through its waters. Grandeur and subtlety exist together. Even silence in the park often holds hidden activity. Birds move in forest canopies. Amphibians stir in marshes. Wind carries pollinators through meadows. Water supports unseen aquatic life. What appears still may be full of movement. Grand Teton National Park also carries a profound story through the passage of seasons, because each part of the year reveals the same landscape in different ways. The mountains remain, the rivers continue, wildlife endures, yet the park can feel almost transformed from one season to the next. These changes are not simply visual. They shape the movement of water, the lives of animals, the growth of plants, and the rhythms of the entire ecosystem. Spring arrives gradually in the Tetons. It often begins in lower valleys, while snow still lies deep across the high country. Streams swell with meltwater, wetlands fill, and the valley begins turning green after long winter dormancy. New growth appears in meadows and willow flats, and migratory birds return to waters opening from ice. Spring runoff is one of the defining events of the year. Snow stored through winter begins moving through the landscape as living water. Creeks rush through canyons, rivers rise, wetlands spread outward. The whole park seems touched by motion. What was frozen begins flowing. For wildlife, spring is a season of return and renewal. Elk and other animals move with changing forage. Birds nest in marshes and along river corridors. Many animals enter the season of raising young. Life becomes active in nearly every habitat. Wildflowers begin appearing first at lower elevations, then later in mountain meadows as snow retreats upslope. Because elevation shapes the timing of spring, blooming may move through the landscape in stages. What begins in valley grasslands may continue months later high in alpine country. Summer brings the brief, full abundance of the mountain year. Trails open into high country. Alpine basins become accessible. Lakes clear of ice. Meadows hold flowering plants at their richest. Wildlife uses the season intensely because in mountain climates, warmth never lasts long. This short growing season gives summer a sense of concentration. Plants must grow, flower, and set seed within limited time. Animals feed heavily. Streams carry snow-fed water. Even the long daylight seems part of this season's urgency. High alpine tundra becomes most accessible in summer, revealing a world hidden beneath snow much of the year. Tiny flowers bloom among rock. Pikas gather vegetation. Marmots feed before the return of cold. Life in these elevations moves within narrow windows, yet often with remarkable intensity. Summer storms also belong to the season. Afternoon thunder may build over ridges, rain may sweep across valley and forest, and mountain weather can shift with little warning. Storms bring moisture, shape streams, and remind all life in the park that climate remains an active force. Then autumn begins its quiet transformation. The first cool nights hint at change. Aspens turn gold along slopes and streams. Grasses shift tone. The air grows sharper. Light often seems clearer. The season carries both richness and restraint. Autumn is also shaped by migration and preparation. Animals feed toward winter. Elk enter the rut. Bird movements begin shifting southward. There is energy in the season, yet also a gathering inward as cold approaches. Few sights in the Tetons match autumn color against the mountains. Gold aspens beneath dark conifers and pale granite create one of the classic seasonal scenes of the park. Yet beneath beauty lies ecological transition. Plants harden for winter. Animals respond to shortening days. Water systems prepare for freeze. Winter then remakes the landscape. Snow spreads across the valley floor. Forests darken against white ground. Lakes freeze. Rivers continue moving in cold silence. The park becomes quieter in appearance, yet life persists through different strategies. Snow is not simply winter scenery. It shapes movement, survival, and the coming year's water supply. Deep snow influences where animals travel and where they can feed. It insulates some smaller creatures beneath its surface. It stores moisture the whole system will later depend on. Bison push through snow to graze. Moose browse where food remains accessible. Wildlife adjusts rather than disappears. Winter reveals resilience as much as severity. Cross-country ski routes and winter travel reveal another face of the park, one of openness and stillness, unlike summer's abundance. Yet even in winter, the landscape is active. Wind sculpts snow, rivers move below ice edges, avalanches reshape some slopes. The mountains remain dynamic. These seasons are not separate chapters laid side by side. Each prepares the next. Winter snow becomes spring runoff. Spring moisture feeds summer growth. Summer abundance supports autumn preparation. Autumn leads back toward winter. The cycle turns as one whole. This seasonal rhythm shapes everything already explored in the park. Glaciers depend on snow. Rivers depend on melt. Migrations respond to forage shaped by season. Wetlands fill and recede. Alpine life follows narrow windows. Even geology is touched by freeze and thaw. The mountains themselves seem to hold all seasons at once. Even in summer, snow may linger high above warm meadows. In autumn, winter may already gather on summits. Elevation lets multiple seasons exist almost side by side. This layering adds to the sense that the Tetons are never fully seen in one visit or one season. They reveal themselves through repetition, through return, through watching change. Across spring runoff, summer wildflowers, autumn migrations, winter snow, and the turning patterns that bind them together, the Tetons show a landscape shaped as much by time as by stone. Grand Teton National Park also inspires wonder through the ways water, weather, and elevation combine to create shifting patterns that are never exactly repeated. Even familiar places change continually through season, cloud, snowmelt, and wind. A lake seen in morning calm may appear transformed beneath afternoon weather. A valley bright with summer grasses may months later lie silent under deep snow. These changes are not decoration laid over a fixed landscape. They are part of how the park lives. Elevation shapes much of this variation. From the valley floor to the highest summits, temperature, snowfall, moisture, and growing seasons can differ dramatically over relatively short distances. A warm meadow may lie below snow-covered slopes. Rain may fall in the valley, while higher elevations receive fresh snow. These contrasts help explain why so many habitats and conditions can exist so close together. Snow remains one of the great shaping forces. In winter, it gathers across the range in immense accumulations, sculpted by wind into ridges and cornices. In spring, that snow begins its long release into streams and rivers. Water moving through the park in summer often began as storms months earlier. This continuity between winter snow and summer life runs through nearly everything in the Tetons. Mountain lakes reveal this connection beautifully. Fed by snowmelt and streams, they hold clear, cold water shaped by geology and season. Some lie broad and open like Jackson Lake. Others rest in glacial basins beneath cliffs and lingering snowfields. Though varied in scale, they share a stillness that often invites close attention. Jenny Lake remains among the most loved of these waters, partly because it gathers so many qualities at once. Glacial origins, mountain reflections, forests rising from shore, and clarity all meet there. Yet even this familiar place shifts through weather and season. Morning mist, summer brightness, autumn calm, winter ice. The lake never appears quite the same. Smaller alpine lakes deepen this sense of hidden variation. Some remain partly frozen well into warmer months. Others shimmer beneath cirques carved by vanished ice. Their cold, clear waters often reflect surrounding ridges so sharply that mountains seem suspended both above and below. Waterfalls descending from hanging valleys add movement to this mountain water world. Snowfields feed streams that drop through rock ledges and forested canyons. In spring and early summer, many run strongest, carrying the force of melting snow. Their sound often becomes part of the memory of mountain trails. Weather shapes these waters constantly. Wind roughens lake surfaces into shifting silver patterns. Storms darken water beneath moving clouds. Rain alters river color and current. Ice transforms shorelines. Water receives weather visibly. Clouds bring another dimension to the mountains. Summer cumulus may rise over ridges through warm afternoons. Lenticular clouds sometimes gather near summits in sculpted forms. Storm clouds cast moving shadows over meadows and cliffs. The sky often feels active in dialogue with the land. Light changes with these atmospheric shifts. Dawn may touch high peaks first, while valleys remain dim. Evening may hold brief alpenglow on granite walls before color fades into blue shadow. The mountains seem almost to change character through light alone. Yet weather in the Tetons is not only beauty, it carries force. Thunderstorms can arrive quickly. Winds may rise strongly across open water. Snow may come unexpectedly in shoulder seasons. Conditions in mountain country can change with surprising speed. These realities help explain why weather belongs not merely to scenery, but to the life of the park. It shapes plant growth, wildlife movement, snowpack, stream flow, and even how people experience the land. Weather is part of ecological process. The park's rivers reflect this vividly. The Snake responds to snowmelt, rainfall, and season. Its channels shift through time. Flow levels rise and fall. Wetlands respond. Fish habitats respond. The river is always moving within larger patterns. Even dry-looking sage country is shaped by moisture patterns and climate. Snowfall, spring runoff, summer dryness, and storm cycles influence plant communities and wildlife use across the valley. Open landscapes often carry more subtle hydrology than they first reveal. At high elevations, weather can be especially defining. Wind shapes alpine vegetation. Snow lingers in shaded places through summer. Frost may return early. Life in these places depends on adaptation to uncertainty. Perhaps this is one reason alpine tundra can feel so remarkable. It exists in severe conditions, yet holds flowers, small mammals, and quiet abundance. Fragility and resilience meet there. Perhaps what makes these patterns so compelling is their endless variation. Mountains remain recognizable, yet cloud, snow, water, season, and light ensure they are never truly repeated. The landscape resists becoming fixed. This can create a sense of return even within a single visit. The same place draws the eye again because it keeps changing. A river bend in morning differs by evening. A lake in calm differs after wind. A peak in summer differs under autumn snow. Grand Teton National Park often inspires awe through dramatic forms, yet much of its quiet depth lies in these changing patterns. The mountains stand enduring, but atmosphere keeps revealing them anew. Across snowfields feeding rivers, clouds moving over granite, lakes reflecting shifting skies, and high winds shaping alpine life, the park shows a world made not only of enduring forms, but of continual variation. And in that meeting of permanence and change, the Tetons hold a calm beauty that never seems fully exhausted. Grand Teton National Park also invites attention to time on scales beyond ordinary human experience. Some places feel old through ruins or memory, but the Tetons often feel old through the visible presence of deep time itself. The mountains rise in youthful sharpness, yet the rocks within them carry histories far older than their present forms. Valleys shaped by recent glaciers rest upon ancient geological foundations. Human presence here reaches back thousands of years, yet even that is brief beside the ages held in stone. Some of the oldest rocks in the core of the range are more than 2 billion years old. To consider that age while looking at granite cliffs glowing in mountain light can reshape the sense of what a landscape is. These rocks formed long before the present mountains existed. They belong to Earth history, almost beyond imagination, yet they stand visible in the summits today. At the same time, the dramatic rise of the Tetons as a range is geologically young. That contrast gives the mountain's unusual character. Ancient rock forms a relatively youthful mountain system, sharpened by more recent glaciation. Deep age and geological youth exist together. Marine fossils found in some rocks of the region deepen this sense of layered time. Shell-bearing sediments that formed in ancient seas were later lifted into mountain country. To stand among alpine terrain and no traces of vanished oceans are present in stone alters the imagination. The landscape carries worlds within worlds. Glacial history adds another scale. Though the last major ice age ended thousands of years ago, many features carved by those glaciers remain vivid. U-shaped valleys, cirques, moraines, and lake basins preserve the work of moving ice. Looking at these forms can feel almost like reading a visible record of vanished climates. Even active glaciers still remaining in the range carry that link to longer climatic histories. Though smaller now than ancient ice masses, they preserve continuity with processes still shaping the mountains. They remind us that the park's story is not frozen in the past. It continues. Erosion too works through timescales difficult to grasp. Frost breaks rock. Water carries sediment. Gravity moves stone downslope. Over years, little may seem altered. Over ages, mountains change profoundly. The Tetons hold both those truths at once. This sense of time is not only geological. Ecological rhythms carry long continuities as well. Migrations repeated through generations, seasonal cycles returning across centuries, forests renewing after disturbance, rivers shifting through floodplains over long periods. Life carries memory in patterns as much as in fossils. Human history adds another layer. Indigenous presence in the region reaches back many thousands of years. Those years are brief beside geological time, yet long beside modern settlement. Fur trappers, homesteads, early climbers, conservation vision, and the creation of the park form another series of layers placed within the older landscape. Mormon Row expresses this beautifully. Weathered barns stand as relatively recent traces beneath mountains shaped through immense time. Human effort appears small beside geological scale, yet deeply meaningful within it. Perhaps this is part of why the Tetons can feel humbling. They place human life within wider durations without diminishing it. A trail walked today crosses glacial terrain carved ages ago. A river viewed at sunset follows patterns older than memory. Present experience touches ancient process. Even trees can hold visible measures of time. Old conifers may have stood through centuries of storms, winters, and returning springs. Growth rings quietly record changing seasons through lifetimes longer than many human histories. This does not make the park feel distant. In a curious way, it can make it feel more intimate. When deep time becomes visible through mountains, fossils, glaciers, and rivers, abstraction becomes place. Perhaps that is one reason people often feel changed by such landscapes. They suggest a wider frame for thought. They slow ordinary measures of urgency. They invite attention beyond immediate scale. The Tetons also show that time does not move only in one grand direction. Some processes unfold over billions of years. Others return each season. Snow falls each winter. Melt returns each spring. Wildflowers bloom and fade. Elk migrate. Small cycles move within immense ones. This layering of time may be one of the park's quietest wonders. Ancient rock beneath young mountains. Ice Age forms beside living rivers. Historic barns below timeless peaks. Seasonal return within geological change. Even the abrupt skyline itself can be read partly as a monument to time. Fault movement raised it. Glaciers sharpened it. Weather continues refining it. What seems permanent is shaped through change. Grand Teton National Park is often admired for scenery, yet its deeper power may lie partly in revealing time made visible. Few places allow a person to sense so many scales at once. To stand beside a moraine, touch ancient rock, watch a river fed by mountain snow, hear elk in autumn air, and look upward into stars above the dark range is to encounter time not as abstraction, but as presence. Grand Teton National Park also carries a profound quiet through sound, or what often feels like the absence of it. Yet the park is never truly silent. Its soundscape is made of water moving over stone, wind through conifers, distant bird calls, insect hum in summer meadows, and winter snow softening the world. These sounds can seem subtle beside dramatic mountains, yet they shape how the landscape is experienced as deeply as anything seen. The Snake River has many voices. In broad, calm stretches, it may move almost without sound, while in narrower channels, current speaks more clearly over gravel and stone. Along creeks descending from mountain canyons, water may rush with far greater force, especially in spring runoff when snowmelt is strongest. The sound of moving water is often continuous in the Tetons, even when faint, and it gives the landscape a sense of living motion. Mountain streams carry their own variations. Some tumble through rocky channels in bright, cold cascades. Others move quietly through wet meadows bordered by willow and grass. Waterfalls descending from hanging valleys can be heard before they are seen. Sound often reveals water first. Wind shapes another large part of the park's atmosphere. It moves through sagebrush in soft waves. It passes through pine and fir with shifting tones. At higher elevations, it may move sharply over exposed ridges and stone. Across lakes, it roughens water and carries a different voice again. The same wind sounds different in forest, meadow, cliff, and open valley. Bird calls add fine detail to this soundscape. Waterfowl in wetlands, songbirds in forest edges, ravens crossing open air, the distant cry of raptors all contribute to a sense of layered life. In spring and summer mornings especially, much of the park seems carried by bird sound. Autumn brings one of the most memorable sounds of the region through elk bugling. That haunting call, moving across open country, has become inseparable from the season. It belongs to the Tetons as surely as aspen gold and early frost. Even smaller lives contribute. Insects in warm meadows create a soft living hum. Amphibians in wetlands may add their own seasonal voices. These sounds are easy to overlook, yet they help make quiet places feel alive. Winter transforms sound perhaps more than any other season. Snow absorbs and softens noise so that even open landscapes can feel hushed. Footsteps in snow, the faint movement of wind, the crack of ice near water edges, these can seem unusually vivid because so much else grows still. This quieter winter soundscape changes how distance feels. A raven call may carry farther. River water moving beneath ice may seem more distinct. Silence itself takes on texture. Storms bring another voice to the mountains. Thunder rolling among peaks can echo across ridges in long layered sound. Rain moving through forest or striking water changes the atmosphere entirely. Even distant storms can be sensed through sound before clouds fully gather overhead. These natural sounds are not separate from ecological life. Birdsong marks territories and seasons. Flowing water reflects snowmelt and climate. Wind shapes seeds, snow, and weather. Sound often carries information about living processes. The absence of constant mechanical noise in much of the park is part of what makes these sounds so noticeable. Natural soundscapes have become increasingly valued as part of conservation because they belong to habitat as surely as water or forest. Quiet itself can be something protected. There is also something ancient in these sounds. Rivers have moved through valleys for ages. Wind has crossed ridges long before human presence. Bird migrations have returned through countless seasons. To listen closely can feel like hearing continuity. Sound can deepen place in ways vision alone does not. A mountain may be admired from afar, but hearing water below it, wind in nearby trees, and ravens above can make the place feel inhabited rather than observed. Even at night, the soundscape changes. Daybirds quiet. Night sounds emerge. Water continues. Wind may rise or fall. The darkness can make distant sounds seem clearer. The park after sunset often feels vast, partly because sound carries differently. This quieter dimension often becomes part of memory. People may remember mountain views, yet also remember the rush of snow-fed streams, the bugle of elk, the whisper of wind in sage, or the deep hush after snowfall. Perhaps that is because sound reaches inward differently. It does not stand at distance as scenery does. It surrounds. It passes through a place and through the listener at once. Grand Teton National Park is often celebrated through what can be seen, but listening reveals another layer of the landscape. Mountains rise in silence only from afar. Up close, they are accompanied by water, weather, wildlife, and seasonal voices. Across rivers and wetlands, forests and alpine slopes, storm echoes and winter hush, the park carries a quiet music made not of performance, but of living processes continuing. And within that soundscape, subtle, shifting, and ancient, the Tetons reveal another kind of beauty, one heard as much as seen. Grand Teton National Park also reveals itself through movement across distance, not only in the migrations of animals already explored, but in the way the landscape itself invites passage. Valleys open toward mountain passes, rivers trace routes through the basin, wildlife follows old corridors. People have crossed these lands for thousands of years. Movement is part of the identity of this place. Long before map trails, indigenous peoples moved through these valleys and mountain routes, with knowledge shaped by generations. Passes that may appear remote today were known pathways. Rivers served as guides through terrain. Seasonal movement was tied to weather, food, and landscape understanding. These routes belonged to living relationships with place. Later, trappers and explorers crossed much of the same country, though often seeing it through different purposes. Their journeys added names and written accounts, but they were entering landscapes already long traveled. Movement through the Tetons has many histories layered together. Today, trails preserve some of that sense of passage. Valley routes, canyon trails, and high traverses all reveal the park not as a single view, but as a landscape entered gradually. Walking changes scale. Distances felt from overlooks become lived terrain. A valley crossed on foot feels different from one admired from afar. The Teton Crest Trail expresses this especially well. Moving across high country from basin to pass to ridgeline reveals how the mountains connect internally. The range becomes less a skyline and more a living geography of routes, watersheds, and elevations. Animal movement often mirrors these connections. Elk migrations follow old pathways through valley and mountain country. Pronghorn travel long routes, linking protected lands with country beyond. Bears move seasonally in response to food. Birds cross through the region along much larger continental journeys. These movements depend on corridors, on landscapes remaining permeable enough for passage. A functioning ecosystem is not only habitat in fixed places, it is also the ability to move between them. Rivers embody this idea in another form. The Snake River is itself movement made visible, carrying snowmelt from mountains through valley landscapes and onward beyond the park. Water is always traveling. Even still lakes are part of that larger circulation. Geology too carries traces of movement. Glaciers once moved through these valleys, carving and transporting immense quantities of rock. Moraines mark where ice paused in journeys long ended. The land still bears memory of motion. Even wind carries movement across the Tetons. It shifts snow across ridges, carries seeds, shapes weather, and moves through every elevation from sage flats to summits. Some forces travel so constantly they can be forgotten until attention returns to them. Perhaps this is one reason the park often feels alive beyond still scenery. So much is moving. Rivers flow, wildlife migrates, storms pass, snow melts, wind crosses ridges, even mountains weather through slow forms of motion. Human movement in the park often follows these older patterns in quieter ways. Hikers follow stream valleys because water helped shape accessible routes. Climbers use ridgelines and passes shaped by geology. Ski routes in winter trace terrain, made open by snow. Movement often follows the structure of the land. There is something deeply satisfying in landscapes that invite passage. A trail curving through forest toward open views. A river bend suggesting what lies farther downstream. A mountain pass hinting at country beyond. The Tetons hold many such invitations. At the same time, movement here often requires respect. Distances can be greater than they appear. Elevation changes can be demanding. Weather can alter plans quickly. The land rewards patience more than haste. This has long been true for wildlife as well. Migration is not random wandering, but patterned response to season and survival. Animals move because the land asks movement of them. Perhaps this gives the park a sense of continuity. Paths used by people may echo older game routes. River corridors that guide birds also sustain fish and mammals. Different forms of movement overlap. Even visitors passing briefly through scenic roads participate in a smaller way in this theme of passage. Roads follow valleys and reveal the mountains through unfolding perspective rather than single fixed view. The park often discloses itself in sequence. This unfolding quality matters. Grand Teton is not fully grasped at once. It is encountered through movement, through turning bends, gaining elevation, crossing meadows, following rivers. Perhaps that is part of its quiet power. The landscape does not merely stand before observation, it draws one through it. Across old migration corridors, mountain trails, flowing rivers, glacial traces, and wind moving endlessly over stone, the Tetons show a world where motion and place belong together. And through that continual passage, ancient and present, slow and swift, Grand Teton National Park reveals another enduring truth, that wild landscapes are not only places to behold, but places shaped by movement itself. Grand Teton National Park also holds a rare sense of scale, not only through height and distance, but through the way many forms of grandeur meet in one landscape. Mountains rise nearly a mile above the valley floor. Rivers move through broad, open country. Wildlife migrations cross immense spaces. Ancient geological forces remain visible. Yet for all this largeness, the park often feels intimate as well. That meeting of vastness and closeness gives the Tetons much of their lasting power. Scale can first be felt simply through the abrupt rise of the mountains. Because foothills are largely absent, the range seems to surge upward directly from the valley. This creates an impression of vertical drama, unlike many mountain systems. The eye moves from sagebrush plains to granite summits in a single sweep. Few landscapes compress such extremes so clearly. Yet horizontal scale matters as much as height. Jackson Hole spreads broad beneath the range, creating room for rivers, wetlands, migration corridors, and the sense of openness that defines the park. Distances feel generous, horizons remain wide. Even the sky often seems enlarged. This openness affects perception in subtle ways. Weather can be seen moving across the valley from far away. Wildlife may appear as small moving forms against great spaces. Storm shadows drift visibly over long stretches of land. Scale becomes something felt in time as well as space. The mountains themselves hold many scales at once. From a distance they appear monumental forms. Up close they reveal cliffs, ledges, alpine flowers, glacial traces, and hidden basins. What seems singular becomes intricate. Perhaps this layered scale helps explain why the Tetons reward repeated attention. A grand overlook can inspire awe, while a small alpine flower beside a trail can hold equal wonder. Vastness does not erase detail here. It holds it. Water reflects this same pattern. Jackson Lake feels expansive enough almost to resemble inland sea in certain light, while a small mountain tarn, hidden in a cirque, may feel like a secret world. Both belong to the same landscape. Wildlife, too, carries different scales of presence. Great migrations unfold across regions, yet a single moose feeding quietly in marsh reeds can feel complete in itself. Large ecological processes and intimate encounters coexist. Deep time adds another scale. Ancient rock billions of years old, glacial shaping from ice ages, seasonal cycles returning each year, all operate simultaneously. The mind shifts among scales when considering such a place. The park also holds a rare sense of visual proportion. Mountains are dramatic, yet not so overwhelming that valley life disappears beneath them. Open country balances steep summits. Water softens stone. Forests link mountain and basin. There is harmony in the proportions. This harmony may be one reason the Tetons have inspired so many painters, photographers, climbers, and writers. The landscape often feels composed, though formed through wild processes. Grandeur and balance meet. Light changes scale as well. Dawn can make peaks seem immense in first sun. Evening shadows can emphasize vast valley space. Under stars, the scale may feel larger still, and yet the Tetons never feel only overwhelming. They invite closeness, a trail through pine forest, water touching shore, bird calls in marsh reeds, wind through sage. The park continually returns from vastness to intimacy. This may be one of its deepest gifts. It allows a person to feel both small and connected, humbled, yet at ease. Even conservation can be understood through scale here. Protecting scenic views alone would not preserve what makes this landscape whole. Ecological scale, migration scale, watershed scale, geological scale, all matter. The park teaches that wholeness often depends on thinking broadly. Across mountain relief, open valley, deep time, wildlife movement, the quiet intimacy of smaller lives, Grand Teton gathers many scales into one landscape, and in doing so, it offers a rare experience, a place where grandeur does not overwhelm peace, and immensity can feel calm. Grand Teton National Park holds together many worlds that elsewhere often seem separate. Mountains shaped by fault uplift rise above valleys formed by ice and rivers. Wetlands support quiet bird life, while great mammals move through sage country. Ancient rock carries traces of vanished seas. Glaciers still cling high in the range. Snow feeds rivers. Seasons turn. Through all these layers, the park feels not like scattered wonders gathered in one place, but like one living whole. The Tetons are often first remembered for their skyline. Sharp granite summits rising almost directly from the valley floor create one of the great mountain profiles in the world. Yet over time it becomes clear that the skyline alone does not explain the power of this landscape. Its meaning lies in relationships, peaks with valleys, snow with rivers, wildlife with migration, stone with time. Everything belongs through connection. The Teton Fault lifted the range and lowered the basin of Jackson Hole, giving the land its dramatic form. Glaciers later carved cirques, sharpened ridges, and left moraines across the valley. Rivers continued the shaping. Frost, wind, and gravity still work upon stone. The mountains appear enduring, yet they remain part of processes still unfolding. Water threads through nearly every part of the park. Snow stored in winter feeds, spring runoff. Streams descend from alpine basins. The Snake River winds through the valley in broad bends, supporting wetlands and life along its course. Lakes hold glacial clarity beneath mountain walls. Water reflects the peaks, shapes habitats, and carries continuity through every season. Wildlife moves through this landscape by rhythms far older than roads or park boundaries. Elk follow migration routes. Pronghorn cross open sage country. Moose browse willow flats. Bears range through forests and mountain slopes. Swans move across quiet marshes. Pikas gather food among talus. Even the smallest lives belong to patterns extending across the whole. The greater Yellowstone ecosystem gives these lives room. Grand Teton is part of something larger than itself, one of the last great temperate ecosystems still functioning at remarkable scale. That fact deepens the meaning of every river bend and animal track. Beauty here is inseparable from ecological wholeness. The seasons reveal that wholeness through continual change. Spring brings snowmelt and return. Summer opens high country and brief abundance. Autumn gathers gold in aspens and bugling in meadows. Winter remakes the land in snow and stillness. Each season changes the park completely, yet each belongs to one turning cycle. Even disturbance belongs within that whole. Fire renews forests, floods shape wetlands, avalanches alter slopes, storms move across ridges. Change is not outside the life of the park, it is part of how life continues. Human history too is woven into the land. Indigenous peoples knew these valleys long before maps. Trappers crossed mountain country. Climbers sought summits. Homesteads stood beneath immense peaks. Conservation vision helped preserve the larger landscape. Human presence here forms another layer within a much older story. A glacial lake beneath cliffs. A moose in morning marsh light. Wind through sagebrush. Ravens over granite ridges. Snowfields feeding summer streams. Ancient fossils in mountain rock. Each might seem a separate wonder, yet each belongs to one living landscape. The park teaches quietly through these relationships. Mountains are not separate from water. Wildlife is not separate from season. Beauty is not separate from process. Wildness is not stillness frozen in perfection, but life continuing through connection and change. To stand in Jackson Hole with the mountains rising beyond open sage, to hear water moving below cottonwoods, to watch evening light fade from granite into blue shadow, is to sense something both vast and intimate at once. Grand Teton National Park is often called one of America's most beautiful places. That may be true, yet beauty alone feels too small a word. It is also one of the clearest places to feel geology, ecology, season, and time joined. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you enjoyed learning about Grand Teton National Park.